Whispers of Winter Episode 2, The Bookstore Secret. They say every story in Quebec hides a ghost, some in the snow, others in the heart. The message glowed on Isabella's phone long after midnight. If you want to know who she was, meet me tomorrow at the bookstore. Don't tell Léo. She reread it again and again until the light from the screen blurred into the falling snow outside her window. Who would send such a message? And why warn her not to tell him? The storm had grown heavier overnight, and the city looked like it had been erased and redrawn in white. She barely slept. When dawn broke, pale and trembling, she packed her camera and went downstairs. The bookstore's windows were still dark. A single lamp glowed inside, faint and yellow. She hesitated at the door, her pulse beating in her throat. Then, footsteps behind her. "Excuse me," a voice said softly. A woman stood there, wrapped in a long gray coat, her hood dusted with snow. Mid-40s maybe, elegant but tired, like someone who'd carried too many winters on her shoulders. "You're Isabella Cruz," the woman said, not asking but stating. "Yes, I'm Claire Bellerose." Isabella blinked. Bellerose, as in, yes, Léo's older sister. The world seemed to tilt a little. Claire's eyes, gray as frost, searched hers. "I sent the message," Claire said quietly. "Please, we can't speak here." They crossed the narrow street to a cafe still setting up for morning. The smell of espresso and warm bread filled the air. Claire removed her gloves carefully, as though each movement carried weight. "I saw you with my brother," she began. "He doesn't let people in easily anymore." "I didn't mean to intrude," Claire shook her head. "No, it's not that. It's just, when he starts to care for someone, the past finds a way back." Isabella listened in silence, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug she could barely feel. "Do you remember the photograph behind the counter?" Claire asked. "Yes, the woman." "Her name was Camille." Claire's voice trembled slightly. "She and Léo were engaged 3 years ago. She died the night of the first snow." The cafe seemed to go quiet, the clinking of cups fading into nothing. "They were driving back from Montmorency Falls," Claire continued. "A car lost control on the bridge. Léo survived. She didn't. He blamed himself. Since then, he's kept that shop open every day, even in storms, as if keeping the door unlocked might let her walk back in." Isabella's chest tightened. The image of Léo by the river last night, the candle, the photo, made terrible sense now. "Why tell me this?" she whispered. Claire looked at her with a mixture of warning and compassion. "Because you remind him of her, and because Camille wasn't just anyone. She was a journalist working on a story when she died, a story someone didn't want her to finish." Isabella frowned. "What kind of story?" "One about a company buying out historic properties here in Old Quebec. She found something, documents, letters. She told Léo she'd hidden them in one of his old books. But after the accident, the papers vanished." Claire slid a folded envelope across the table. "These are copies of her notes I found later. I think she wanted Léo to know the truth, but I'm not sure he ever opened them. Maybe you can." Inside were a few yellowed pages, Camille's handwriting, neat and looping. One line caught Isabella's eye. "If I don't make it, the truth is in The Winter Guest." He'll know what that means. Isabella's heart skipped. The Winter Guest, that was the book Léo had given her. Claire stood to leave. "Be careful, Miss Cruz. Some stories bury themselves for a reason." Back in her apartment, Isabella sat on the floor, the book in her lap. She flipped through its pages, the scent of paper and ink rising like memory. Nothing unusual, until she reached the middle, where the spine felt slightly thicker. She pressed gently, and something crinkled inside. A small envelope slid out, yellowed with age. Her breath caught. Inside was a letter written in a woman's hand. The ink had bled in places, but the words were still legible. "My dearest Léo, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't tell you in time. I was right. The company isn't what it seems. They're laundering money through the properties. I've left proof hidden inside the first edition of Les Voix du Nord. Please don't blame yourself for what happens next. Remember what we always said. Winter hides, but spring remembers. Yours forever, Camille." Isabella stared at the letter, the edges trembling in her hands. The story wasn't just about lost love. It was about danger, unfinished work, and maybe even justice. She heard movement downstairs, the familiar creak of the bookstore's floorboards. She slipped the letter into her coat and hurried down. Léo was at the counter, sorting books as if nothing had changed. He looked up and smiled. "Good morning, Isabella. You look like you've seen a ghost." Her throat went dry. Should she tell him? "I didn't sleep much," she managed. "Too much snow?" He teased gently. "Too many thoughts?" He chuckled, and for a moment his smile melted the tension inside her. Then she saw it. A faint scar near his temple she hadn't noticed before. A relic of the accident, maybe. He noticed her staring and said quietly, "Some winters leave marks you can't photograph." Her chest ached. She wanted to reach out, to say she understood, but the letter in her pocket burned like a secret she wasn't meant to hold. When he turned to fetch coffee, she glanced around. On a high shelf above the counter sat a worn, leather-bound book with gold lettering, Les Voix du Nord. Her pulse quickened. That was the one. "May I look at that?" she asked. Léo hesitated. "That's an old one. Not for sale. Just curious," she said lightly. He studied her, then handed it down. The cover was cracked, the pages fragile. Inside the front cover was a note, Camille's handwriting again. For Léo, every voice has a season. Isabella turned another page and froze. Between two chapters lay a small key taped to the paper. Before she could speak, Léo's voice cut through the silence. "You shouldn't be reading that." She looked up. His tone wasn't angry, but something in his eyes had changed. Guarded, wary. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean—" He took the book gently but firmly. Some stories hurt more when reopened. She swallowed hard. "Léo, was Camille writing something before she died?" He stared at the window, where snow drifted past like ash. Everyone writes something before they go. Sometimes it's just goodbye. Then he turned away, and the conversation ended. That evening, Isabella couldn't focus on her photography. The key haunted her thoughts. What did it open? Why hide it in a book? At midnight she heard a sound below. Footsteps again. She peered through the window. The bookstore lights were on, though the shop had closed hours ago. Léo was there, standing behind the counter, the same book open before him. He removed the key, hesitated, then slipped it into his pocket. Isabella grabbed her coat and hurried downstairs, but when she reached the door, the shop was dark again. Only the faint scent of coffee lingered. On the counter lay a single slip of paper, torn from a notebook. "If you ever doubt me, follow the lights at Rue du Pont." Midnight. But how? The next night, snow fell thick and soundless. Isabella followed the map of lanterns that dotted Rue du Pont, leading toward the old bridge, where the river shimmered beneath the ice. The street was deserted except for one figure standing at the far end. "Léo, you shouldn't be here," he said softly. "I found the letter," she confessed. "And the key?" He exhaled, a cloud of mist fading into the dark. "Then you know too much. Léo, what are you hiding?" He stepped closer, his voice low. "The truth killed her, Isabella. I won't let it take someone else." Before she could answer, headlights cut through the snow. A black SUV turning slowly onto the bridge. Léo's expression hardened. "Go home," he whispered.
Now, the car stopped.
Two men stepped out, coats dark against the snow. One called out in French. Words Isabella couldn't catch, but she saw the tension in Léo's stance. The fear. He turned to her, urgent. "Remember the key. Whatever happens, keep it safe." "Léo, what is this? Run!" She hesitated, heart pounding, torn between fleeing and staying. Then one of the men shouted, and Léo pushed her toward the shadows. The sound of footsteps, raised voices, the echo of something metallic. Isabella stumbled through the alley, clutching the key in her pocket, her breath burning. Behind her came a shout, and then silence. When she finally dared to look back, the bridge was empty. The car gone. The snow falling heavier, erasing footprints, erasing everything. Only one thing remained on the ground where Léo had stood. His scarf, half buried in white. She knelt, fingers shaking as she picked it up. And then she saw it, stitched on the inside hem, almost invisible unless the fabric caught the light. Whispers of Winter End of Episode 2. Léo has vanished after the confrontation on the bridge, leaving Isabella with the mysterious key and a trail that might uncover the truth behind Camille's death or lead her into the same danger.